Welcome back to MOMnation Unscripted. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I am Kelly with O'Lardy, and it is our mission to get toxin-free products into every home and more money into more people's pockets. 8 years ago, we were moms who couldn't stop sharing education on real food, gut health, and fermenting. Over the years, we started paying attention to not only what we put in our bodies, but also what we put on our bodies. Now, as movement makers, we are on a mission to show you how you and your family can live a toxin-free lifestyle. Follow us on Instagram at kelly.liston and at Tamara Manley, and email us at olardyblog@gmail.com to connect.
Hey, Mom Nation and the rest of the world. It is Katie here with Mom Nation Unscripted. And I don't know if you all can believe this, but we're on season 3, episode 9. So crazy. It's like life goes by so darn quickly, Sarah, I have to say. What do you think? You think it goes by quick?
Right now, it's feeling pretty slow.
True confessions. Totally. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. My co-host, Beth, we're going to give her a little bit of grace today because I'll tell you, she just started with, and I can't even pronounce it right, so sorry people out there, but she just started with Predna, and it's homeschooling, but you homeschool other people's families, and they kind of help you with your kids and that sort of thing. So I know. We need to give her some grace today, don't we? Like, bless you, Beth. Bless your sweetheart.
An award, possibly like a sainthood. Possibly.
I totally agree. We'll give her one of those. So usually we go for, Beth and I chit chat a little bit and how was your week? How was your week kind of thing. So we're going to have to find out about Beth's week next week. And I'm really actually excited to hear how things went. I did check in with her yesterday, and maybe I shouldn't steal her thunder. I'll let her tell the world how everything's been going with that. But anyway, she started this week. So bless you, Beth. We'll see you next week and hope all is going well for you, my friend. I just recently went to Flagstaff for a couple of days just to get out of the heat and break the boredom. You know what I mean? And went with the boys, and that was really cool. I'm assuming you've been to Flagstaff before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous right now. I'm ready for a trip too.
I'm ready. You're like, shut up, Katie. Tell me about that. It was amazing. It was weird to feel cold, like leaving the hotel, especially at night. Would go run and get dinner, and would eat dinner outside, and it was just kind of chilly. And we had sweatshirts, and we had long pants, and all of that kind of thing. So.
Can't even remember what cold feels like right now. Yeah, wait. I'm so ready for fall. I'm so ready.
I know. Same. Although I love summer. I truly do. I love being able to swim, especially, at night and all of that. So swimming is definitely something my family loves to do. And so we have patience for summer, we'll just say, for some patience for summer. But we went to Arizona, which was cool. Yeah. And so it's this, if you don't know what it is, we've spent a lot of time outdoors because, the whole COVID thing. But it's an outdoor park. So it's kind of like a zoo-ish kind of thing. You drive through the park and you go through these different sections where they have bear and wolves and all these different like bison, like huge, enormous bison. And you're literally driving your car and like the bison's crossing in front or the wolf is like crossing in front. Yeah. It was
That's
super
so
cool.
I have not been there yet, but one day it's on my bucket list for sure.
Check it out. It's amazing. They have a couple of other animals too that you can get familiar with and check out, like cheetahs and bald eagles, which are my favorite animals. So I spent a lot of time at the bald eagle nest thing.
So cool.
But yeah, it was cool. And if you're on vacation and you're a parent, sometimes, you need a frosty cold one. So they'll actually serve you your frosty cold ones and you can walk around the park, which is great.
Nice.
Yeah. So we did that. And then the next day we went up to the Grand Canyon, which I haven't been to in 8, 10, 12, 14 years. And it's incredible. It's breathtaking every single time. Have you been there?
No, I have lived here for 6 years and I have never been. So also on my bucket list.
Definitely check out the canyon. I will tell you, this time of year, even though it's further north, it's a bit warmer than Flagstaff. And so we were like 78 to 80 degrees in Flagstaff, and it was 92 up at the canyon the day that we went. So it was a little warm.
Yeah, that's it's a little warm for me, but winter is coming, and then I'm hitting all those good spots. I'm ready.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely winter is a great time to go see the canyon. I don't know if they have any kind of winter weather up there, but I don't know. I've never looked into that, never went in the winter, but it might be kind of pretty if they do, to see snow on all of that. So
that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Definitely check it out. While I was there, Flagstaff is just full of awesome restaurants. And so I certainly ate my fair share. It's a good transition into today's topic. I'm not as good as Beth at that, but food is today's topic. So Sara, we have you on as a guest today because this is your specialty. This is your expertise. You have some experience with this. So tell me a little bit about the beginnings of your experience level. Was this something that you struggled with yourself, or, what's the reason that you got into this, and what exactly do you do?
Okay, so this is actually a fun one. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. So my name is Sara. I am a wife. I'm a mom of 3 small kids, 4, 3, and 9 months, and they keep me super busy.
Sure.
I'm also actually a nationally registered EMT, and I've worked in emergency medicine since 2012, and I've worked in actually emergency rooms since that time. And probably 7 months ago, I kind of had a little come to Jesus with myself, because I looked around at what I was doing in the emergency department, and I realized that probably 80% of the people I was seeing that were super, super sick, totally preventable with lifestyle choices. So I started to watch this, and then COVID hit in the same kind of thing, high risk because of lifestyle choices. And I started to get really frustrated at our healthcare system that, why are we waiting until people are dying before we start trying to help them get better? So I started to feel this really strong pull towards prevention. So back in February, I quit my job. I enrolled in a health and wellness coach certification course and got certified. And I have been coaching since that time. And I love it. And this is one of my favorite topics, specifically, really the mindset around food and food addiction. It's a super, super tough one. But it's something that I feel like most people struggle with, and to some degree. Everyone struggles with it to an extent. And so I really like to be able to help people where they're at. And that's kind of my background. And this is something that I personally struggle with. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but I personally have a really high susceptibility to food addiction. So this is definitely something I've struggled with. It's something I still struggle with. But I'm hoping that I can help someone else by sharing my struggles.
Yeah, totally. And tell me a little bit more about those emergency room experiences and what kind of ailments you were seeing over and over and over again that you knew were directly related to lifestyle.
This could be a very long list.
Well, you told me you have 6 hours because your husband took the kids out of the house, so hey.
Yeah, let's do it. So really, so many things, diabetic emergencies, heart attacks, a lot of like high blood pressure related emergencies, including strokes, even to an extent, certain cancers that are preventable with lifestyle. So, I mean, really the sickest of the sick, for the most part, probably 80% of the time, were totally preventable and didn't have to get as bad as they were before they had to come see me.
And it doesn't necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that obesity comes into play here, right? I mean, can you have a food addiction and have all of these problems going on and have these health complications without that piece?
100%, definitely. And that's actually way more common, I think, than people realize.
Interesting. So let's start peeling the onion, basically. How does this stuff start? Like, is it in childhood? I would imagine that's where everything starts, right? Like, how does this become an addiction. Like, for an alcoholic, it's, well, I drink socially, and then all of a sudden I start drinking alone, and then all of a sudden I start drinking all day, and then, you know what I mean? So is it the same sort of sequence for somebody that's suffering from a food addiction?
So I'm actually going to take you a little bit further back. Let's talk a little bit about this. I love this question. So this is really hard because we are basically fighting our instincts. So let's go back like 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
So our ancestors, right, were all hunters and gatherers. We didn't have civilizations. We didn't have refrigerators. We didn't have grocery stores. So everything that they did was to survive. They had to walk everywhere they went. They had to paddle or canoe. They had to run from the buffalo. I don't know, whatever they were doing back then, right? And at that time, because they were nomads and moving around, if you came across a bush full of berries, you had to eat all of them. There was no bringing it with you. There was no saving it for later. You had to eat the entire bush. If you killed an animal, you and your tribe ate the entire thing right then. And that, unfortunately, that instinct still exists in our brain. We still have that innate instinct to eat as much as we can so that we can survive, right? So that's something that we are all born with. That's the same reason that if you have ever been sitting on the couch and you have like a bag of chips or a sleeve of cookies and you're just like munching away and you reach down and they're all gone and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I just eat that whole bag of cookies? That's your primal brain kicking in, right? So that's an instinct that we all have. That's not something, that's something that we tend to say, oh, I just have no self-control. Oh, I just have bad habits. Oh, I just, no, that's an instinct, okay? That's not your fault. So you got to release the shame around that, first of all.
Ooh, release the shame. We'll talk about that later.
We are a shame-free group here. I don't mess around with that.
Are. And I feel like shame, and I call it shooting on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that really gets in the way of things, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of along that same path, we live in a different world. We still have those same instincts, but we live in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
The most hunting we have to do is go to the grocery store and push a cart around. We can drive through a fast food restaurant, but again, we still have those same instincts.
Right.
We want to eat, we want to be full, we want to eat as much as we can so that we can, travel and chase the buffalo, but there's no buffalo to chase. And the bad news is the food industry knows this and they take advantage of it. The things that we see at the grocery store are not only cheaply made with not a lot of nutritional value, they're also really highly addictive. The actual foods themselves are very addictive. Things like high fructose corn syrup, and especially the big ones are those enriched, or not the enriched, the, what's the word I'm looking for? The really processed flour and then added sugar. Those are the two biggest ones that really that get to us. Those are the two probably worst ones. And they're everywhere. Those are in your crackers, your cookies, your cakes, your pastas, you're everywhere, in almost everything. Any package you pick up is pretty much going to have those ingredients in it. So the average American, our suggested serving of grains is 3 servings of whole grains, not processed, but whole grains. And the average American eats 10 servings of refined grains and sugars every single day. And that adds up to 150 pounds a year. That's a person, right? 150 pounds is a person. So we are definitely overeating just as a society, right? I'm so thirsty.
No, you're totally fine. So let's give an example of what a whole grain is.
Okay, so what defines a whole grain is going to be something that uses, this is maybe too much information, every part of the kernel of the grain. So when you look on the packaging, the first ingredient, or second, but usually the first, should be whole grain, right? So that's kind of what you're looking for to pay attention to that.
Gotcha.
Or that would include things like oats, like oatmeal. That would be like a whole grain. So there's the, okay. So, sorry, I'm just kind of coming at you.
No, I love it. I love information. Bring it on.
Here's the reason, and I like to understand the why behind things. I like to understand what's happening in my body because it helps me to understand how to deal with it. So that's why I want to share this part of things.
Okay.
So when we eat these things, these refined grains and these added sugars, two things happen in our body. The first one is, so let's say I eat a cookie. When that happens, my blood sugar spikes. That's just what happens when I put the sugar into my body. In order to deal with that, my body releases insulin. So I've got my blood sugar up, my insulin up. There is another hormone in your body called leptin, and that is released when your body is full. It's released when your body's full, and it sends a message to your brain saying, cool, we're done eating now. So when we eat these highly processed foods and our insulin spikes, insulin blocks leptin. It suppresses it so that our body cannot release it. So we actually are killing our body's way of telling us that we're full, which is one of the things that drives us to overeat. We don't know that we're full because our body can't tell us. So that's one thing that right? Who would have known that? So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens when we eat these highly processed foods and these sugars is really the scariest part. And this is where the addiction really comes into play. So they've done studies, and they've actually put people into an MRI machine and watched what happens to their brain when they eat these processed addictive foods.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is your brain gets flooded with a hormone called dopamine, and that is the pleasure hormone. That makes us feel happy, that makes us feel excited, that makes us feel love, it just makes us feel good, right? We call it the pleasure hormone. So your brain gets flooded with this dopamine, and it lights up the pleasure centers of your brain like fireworks. These are the same centers that are activated when you do hard drugs like heroin and cocaine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's bananas. So this is a real physical thing that is happening in your body and in your brain. This again, I just want to emphasize, this isn't a lack of self-control. This isn't, oh, I'm just a fatty. This is not necessarily a personal problem. This is just a physical thing that's happening in your body. So again, we got to release the shame around it, because there's a lot of shame around overeating. But it's unfortunately kind of a product of the world that we live in, and the things that are at the store, and our primal brain that wants to eat the whole bush of berries. And that kind of brings us up to, I'm sorry, that was like the longest answer to your question ever. That kind of brings us up to how these addictions start. This is what happens in our body. This is what triggers those feelings, that high. And in addition to lighting up those same pleasure centers as the heroin and the cocaine, they have also found that you can build up a tolerance. Just like with the hard drugs, you need more and more to get that high. It's the exact same with the sugar and the refined grains. It's the exact same. You need to eat more to get that dopamine rush. So you can build up a tolerance to where you do need to eat more to feel those feelings. So again, it's exactly like those other addictions as far as what happens in your brain. So
wow, that is
yeah, it's wild.
So do you typically see, like, just with your clients and your patients and, people, do you typically see this developing in childhood, or is this something that, like, is there a trigger, or can it just develop at any time? You know what I mean? Like, is there a common situation where you see this?
I think a lot of times it's taught. It's something that we learn from our situation, maybe our parents. Sometimes it is triggered by something like some kind of trauma, whether that's, a divorce or childhood trauma, or some way, it's just a way that we try to take back control and we mask those negative feelings with the positive dopamine that we get in our brain. So it really is totally dependent on the person. But yeah, those are usually trauma and trying to find a way to take control, or adverse emotions. Those are probably the biggest ones that I personally see with my clients.
And do you see this? I don't know if you deal with children, but do you see it in children, or are you mostly dealing with adults on this?
I personally only work with adults or older teens. But I would say when it comes to children, we do naturally have like we naturally regulate. If you give a kid an apple or a candy bar and they haven't had fruit, they'll pick what they need for their body. So I think it's something that we learn to ignore over time, whether we do it intentionally or it's because our parents make us eat the entire plate of food before we can get it from the table, or I'm not judging. I'm not judging.
No,
Okay.
it's a non-judgmental space here, but that's huge because I don't know about you, but I grew up like that.
Yeah. So that's something that I feel comes into play as well. So there's something I want to do. I have like a little quiz for you guys.
Okay.
Okay. So basically this is going to help us to understand if and how this applies to us personally. So anyone who's watching this, I want you to grab like a sheet of paper or your phone or something to like take notes in. Grab your pen or whatever, and I want you to write down rarely, occasionally, and daily. Those are going to be your 3 choices. So depending on what your answer to each question is, you're just going to put a little tick mark by either any of those choices. So again, that's rarely, occasionally, or daily. And I'm going to ask you 10 questions. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, the first time that I went through this, I felt a little attacked because almost every single answer for me is daily. It's a rough one. Okay. Number 1, I find it difficult to control how much I eat. Rarely, occasionally, or daily.
Okay.
Number 2, I crash in the afternoon and I have trouble waking up in the morning. Rarely, occasionally, daily.
Okay.
Number 3, I have cravings for specific foods. Number 4, I suffer from moodiness, headaches, or fatigue. That's a big one for me. Number 5, when I eat only a moderate amount of food, I am not satisfied. Number 6, I feel guilty after eating. Number 7, I spend a considerable amount of time thinking about food. Number 8, I eat even if I am not hungry because I crave a specific food. Number 9, I eat large amounts of food and I feel powerless to stop. And then the last one, I crave carbohydrates like pasta, bread, white rice, or desserts.
Okay, so now tell us how to grade ourselves.
I will. So if you have, the majority of your answers are rarely, you have a low susceptibility to food addiction.
Okay.
If you have mostly occasionally for your answers, you have a moderate susceptibility.
Okay, so I'm moderately susceptible. Are you moderate?
No, I'm so high. I'm not even kidding. If you have a high susceptibility, then most of your answers are going to be daily. That's me. Like almost all of my answers are daily. I love food, you guys. Okay, so I just want to take a second too, because I'm not a doctor. I am not qualified to diagnose or treat anyone with any kind of medical condition that includes addictions. So I want to take a second and differentiate. Just because you are highly susceptible to food addiction does not mean that you are addicted to food. Okay, those are not the same thing. That's just so you're kind of aware of where you are so that you can manage it. Okay, so that's kind of why we did that little exercise.
Okay.
So the difference between having a susceptibility or being fully addicted to something.
It's a word.
It is now. Okay. So an addiction refers to the compulsive use of something, even if it is causing or likely to cause harm. Okay. So this is a compulsive drive to eat, a loss of control over food, harmful consequences of overeating, and distorted perceptions and denial concerning your addiction and its consequences. So in my experience, particularly in the emergency department, what this would look like would be someone whose doctor said, hey, you're going to have a heart attack in the next 3 years if you don't get your life together and don't start taking better care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, and they have a heart attack, right? This looks like a diabetic patient who says, my doctor said I needed to control my blood sugar or I'm going to lose my foot. And they're there for a surgery to remove their foot because they didn't do it. It was too out of control.
Mm-hmm.
This also looks like, on a lesser scale, someone who drives through the drive-through and they overdraft their account to buy that fast food, things like that. So this is when you move into addiction, when you start really adversely affecting other parts of your life, and you can't stop. You don't care. It doesn't matter. You have to get that fix. You have to do it. And you literally feel like you cannot help it. And that's when you start kind of moving from, hey, like I'm at high risk for this versus, hey, I have an addiction that I need to address, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's the difference between I just am a foodie and really love food and the taste of it to, hey, it's affecting my family. Maybe I'm losing relationships. Maybe I'm losing limbs. Maybe I'm losing years off my life, like stuff like that. That's what you mean, right?
Yes, absolutely. You're the best listener.
Thanks.
Oh.
You should tell my mom that.
I want to get into triggers in just a moment.
Yes.
Before I get to that point, I just want to take a second and just say, if you feel like you might have a full-blown addiction to food, anyone who's listening, please don't hesitate to seek help. I know that there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of like negativity around the word addict. I'm an addict. But it's so important. Okay, you can speak with your doctor. You can speak with a registered dietitian. You can speak with a licensed counselor who specializes in eating disorders. There's also a ton of support groups. There's Overeaters Anonymous, Food Addicts Anonymous. There's more. If you want to shoot me a message after this, I'm happy to get you some resources if you feel like you need them. So just know that that's there. And I also really, really strongly recommend, whether you feel like you have a full-blown addiction or you just struggle with food, the first thing I want you to do is tell someone that you can trust to support you through it. Because I think we talked about earlier for a second, addiction thrives in shame and secrecy.
Yeah.
That's where it gets you. It's when you're sitting in your car alone at night. It's when you're up at 2:00 in the morning by yourself, right? So the first thing you can do is tell someone to help you through it. Okay, so that's my number one piece of advice.
Well,
and that's the biggest thing.
Not to interrupt you, but I love the part that you said, hey, look, this food that we're given in stores and that's everywhere is actually removing that tool, that natural tool that everybody's built with. So it kind of helps you lessen that feeling of, oh, I'm totally at fault. Now, probably should do something about it, right? Work with you, tell somebody, start moving toward those steps. But I think just sitting with, hey, this is not necessarily 100% my fault is really helpful in moving in that direction.
Yes. And that's why I always like to drive that point home, because I do feel like it helps remove some of that guilt and shame that typically causes further spiraling, right? We feel guilty, we feel embarrassed. And again, we'll get to this. And then we eat so that we feel better. And it's it's this cycle that never ends. And so really there comes a point when it's okay to ask for help. Like, no one's judging you. There are people whose jobs it is to actually help you. And we want to help you. So please, like, just let go of the guilt, let go of the shame, and learn it's not totally your fault. That's, your primal brain. That's the food industry taking advantage of it. And it's a real thing. It's not a self-control issue. It's a physical issue happening in your brain. And it's okay. So ask for help. That's okay. So for sure, I love that. I liked to make sure that point was like really, really driven home, like beating a dead horse.
Right. It's a sigh of relief though.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Learning that helped me personally so much. So, okay. So whether you have an actual addiction or you're just susceptible to it, right?
Mm-hmm. The
hard part is this isn't like other addictions in that we need food to live.
Right.
You can't just go cold turkey like you can with alcohol or with heroin or with cigarettes or whatever it is that are typically addictive things. We have to eat food to stay alive.
Right.
You can't just not eat. And then on top of that, you've got ads on your Facebook, you've got ads on your Instagram, you've got billboards, you pass like 100 fast food restaurants every time you leave the house, and you can smell them. And we are just bombarded constantly with these messages. Hey, eat this food. Hey, eat this food. Hey, buy this. Hey, this donut's going to make you feel better.
Well, and everything is sort of surrounded, like everything you do has food involved. Like maybe that's just me. I don't know. But hey, you know, I'll call up my friends. Hey, do you want to have a little pool party? Let's barbecue.
Yes.
Oh, hey, you're having a birthday. Of course you have to have a cake.
Yeah.
You know, like all of these things that we do. Right. All these celebrations and get-togethers are around food.
Totally. 100%, which again is another really good reason to tell someone, say, hey, I'm really trying to make healthier choices right now. Can we do something different? If they know already, then they're not going to be like, well, why? Like, how come you can't just, you know? You
shouldn't be friends with them.
You gotta find your people.
Exactly. That is not your people if they say that to you.
Those are not your people. Those are not your people. Okay, so how do we manage? How do we manage in this world that we are constantly bombarded? Just surrounded. It's so easy. It's so easy to just pull through that restaurant or versus go to the grocery store and actually make a meal, right? So the first thing I encourage my clients to do is to identify their triggers. And so what I have them do is keep a journal. You don't know and don't change anything, don't do anything for at least 3 days, but I prefer 7. I prefer at least a week of these. And I have them write down the time when they have a craving, right? Or when they want to eat, the time of day, what's happening around them, what they're feeling, and what they're craving. That's what I have them keep track of. So at the end of the week, if you do that and you look back, I guarantee you will find a pattern. You will find consistent time of day or a consistent feeling. I'm really overwhelmed. My kids won't stop touching me. I just need a donut.
Yeah.
You can tell that's one of mine.
That's awesome.
Okay, so for me personally, my biggest triggers are stress or if I let myself get too hungry. If I let myself get too hungry, all bets are off. I will eat like 4 days worth of calories in one sitting. I can't help it. So I am aware of that and can then work around it, which we'll get to in just a sec. But I just want to share some common triggers so you guys can kind of listen out and see if maybe it like resonates with you and you feel like it's one of yours.
I have a quick question before you share that. So I want to make sure that I'm thinking of this correctly. So those triggers, like when, you know, we're stressed or when, you know, the kids are driving you nuts, is that different than sometimes I feel like I crave things that my body's lacking? Like, for instance, for the last 2 weeks, I could have eaten crab legs every single day. And I haven't looked it up to see what is it in crab that my body's lacking. So am I thinking right?
Yeah, sometimes that is the case, 100%. And I have like a really helpful visual I can totally share in like the comments somewhere that does say, hey, if you're craving this, try this nutrient or this vitamin or, you know, whatever, because sometimes that is the case. But a lot of times those are going to be the cravings that you have when you don't have the negative emotions, when you don't have, you know what I mean? They're kind of different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So getting back, common triggers. These are the biggest ones. When you're in a setting with a lot of food, stress, feeling overwhelmed, physical pain, fatigue,
Interesting.
Alcohol consumption. So when you're kind of uninhibited, feeling judged, rejected, or blamed, any intense or adverse emotion, food restrictions, or eating a forbidden food. So this would apply to people who restrict, and then binge, right? Mm-hmm. So I am a huge advocate for moderation in everything. I do not believe in restricting any food, just moderation. Be careful with it. Anxiety and tension, that's another one of mine.
That's huge. And then I think a lot of people have a lot of stress.
Especially right now. Yeah, we're living in a stressful time. That's why everyone's gaining the quarantine 15, right?
Yes, I've heard of it.
So yeah, boredom, feeling like a failure, anything like that, right? Those are the biggest ones that I see in my clients. Those are the biggest ones I see in myself. It's usually the big emotions that we don't want to feel. So it's easier to get like the fake high, right? It's easier to get that, to eat. It's easier to eat than to deal with those feelings.
Right. And I love how you're using the journal to discover that, because, you know, I don't remember a lot of stuff about my day to day just because I'm moving so fast. So I might not necessarily correlate that. Like, hey, I was feeling attacked because of that phone call I had with whomever, and that's why I went and grabbed a Snickers bar. Like, I may not even think that.
Right.
Unless you start tracking that stuff. So I love that.
It's as simple as, hey, I didn't grab lunch before I went to pick up my kids from school, and I was starving, so I drove to Burger King. You know, sometimes it's something really simple, and sometimes it's more complex. Like, oh my gosh, I got off that call and I felt so like judged and embarrassed, and I don't want to deal with that, and I don't want to feel it. So hand over the cookies, right? So
for me, it's Girl Scout cookies. Like, there's
oh my gosh.
Seriously, there is no box of Girl Scout cookies that will survive under my roof in January, whenever the hell they come out. I got to cut myself off. And it's almost, so this is funny because you talk about like it being similar to a drug addiction. I have my Girl Scout person, like I have my dealer. And I literally would get in touch with her way late at night, like, hey, man, I need some more tag-alongs. Can you drop Girl Scout cookies?
Meet you in the
Those are bad. Anyway.
No, I feel you. I do, genuinely. Okay. But that's important to know. It's important to know, like, what foods we really struggle with. It's important to know why and when we crave things.
Right.
So then we can kind of deal with it, right? In a healthy way that's not eating. So first of all, those big negative emotions, that's one of the biggest ones that people eat. They don't want to feel those feelings. They want that dopamine. They want the pleasure centers in their brain lit up. So they reach for, you know, your Oreos or whatever. I'm going to make people hungry because we keep saying unhealthy foods. So this is the hardest one because it does involve feeling these negative things, right? So
right. It's not just boredom or whatever.
So when you feel those big negative emotions, what I want you to do is feel it. They've done like some studies that show these negative emotions, if you just let yourself feel it and you don't fight it, they last an average of 90 seconds. You can deal with anything for 90 seconds, right? You can deal with feelings of embarrassment for 90 seconds or failure for 90 seconds and just let yourself feel it and then move on. Okay. So that's a big one. Don't mask it, feel it, right? And then there's other things like stress. So if one of your triggers is stress and you know that, now you can figure out, hey, how else can I deal with stress besides eating? Maybe you want to do some deep breathing. Maybe you want to go for a walk. Maybe you want to go screaming your pillow. But there's other options now once you can recognize that that's a trigger for you.
Exercise is really great. I'm glad that you said that because that does the same dopamine release. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Endorphins. So good. It's good stuff. Yes. Okay. So other than that, I'm trying to remember. Oh, and the other thing that I just wanted to touch on, again, is knowing your limits. Like I mentioned, I personally am very highly susceptible to food addiction and to these foods, right? So if I have like a cheat meal or I have like pizza or whatever, I go into like a frenzy and I need more. I can't just have a slice of pizza. I have to have a slice of pizza and then I need to make brownies and I need to have the pan. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm like, well, I did it anyway. So I should probably have some pancakes with butter and syrup. I know
Why not?
that I spiral. And because I know that, and I know that it's just my caveman brain. It's okay. It's not a lack of self-control. It's not that I'm a failure. It's not that I'm destined to be fat for my whole life. It's that I have a high susceptibility. And so I know for me personally, I can have those like enriched products no more than like once or twice a month. And if I do more than that, I spiral and I frenzy. So I get it. I understand for you guys that deal with it because I genuinely do too. And so that's just the last thing. Just learn your limits. It's okay. It might take time. But the biggest thing you can do is look at it as an experiment. Say, hey, oh, that really didn't work. What else can I try next time? Versus, oh, I failed again. I might as well just give up. Oh, I'm the worst. Failure. So letting go of that guilt and that shame is just one of the absolute best things you can do for yourself if this is something that you struggle with.
Totally, because feeling like that about yourself just pushes more of those feelings that you eat to get rid of anyway. So it's just like spiraling. It's like,
it's so hard to break out of. It is so difficult. It's real.
Right?
It's so real. And it's, again, it's just this unfortunate like accumulation of circumstances. So there's so many resources out there, and it's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. I know I said that like 12 times, but I feel like I can't say it enough times. So.
No, I don't think you can. I really don't. I think it's super important. It reminds me of that commercial back when I was a kid. You look nice and young, so you're probably too young for this. But back when I was a kid, there was this commercial that would come on, and it would say, I do cocaine, so I can work more, so I can make more money, so I can do more drugs, so I can work more, so I can make more money, so I can do more drugs. And it just kept repeating that. Yeah. And it just feels like that same sort of thing to me. It's just really no different than being addicted to anything else.
Yeah, genuinely, it really is. And again, it's in a lot of ways, it's harder. I mean, well, it's not, you're not going to have such harsh withdrawal symptoms, but it's around you all of the time. You don't pass billboards for heroin, but you do pass billboards for burgers. So
right. You typically don't go to birthday parties with cocaine lines on the table. Typically. I don't know, maybe some of you do, but
but again, no judgment.
Right. Whatever. But yeah, I get it. And so what are some different things that changing the pattern is probably very important here, right? Breaking that pattern. So what are some different things you said, 90 seconds to feel the feelings? And I get that. I think that is 100% true. And if you just just allow yourself to blow up if you need to, and feel those feelings, then you can get over it quicker. But what are some pattern interrupts that you yourself do that can help some people? Say, for instance, they're feeling the stress on a daily basis with all this COVID and homeschool and work from home and blah, blah, blah going on, and they're feeling the stress on a daily basis. What are some different things that they can do to pattern interrupt so that they can stop that from happening versus just picking up a donut?
Okay, so the first thing I like to talk about is turning emotion into motion. Get up and move your body. Whether that's, I'm going to just walk around my backyard for 5 minutes, whether you're going to do a yoga video or a full-blown workout, any of those things, get up, stretch, and move your body, okay? Because that's the first thing that's going to break that negative emotion cycle, okay? Right. There are many cases. I'm a really big fan of therapy. I think everyone should go to therapy, whether you have past trauma, whether you don't, because that's a really, really good way to learn what it is that emotionally triggers you. For me, one of mine is when I feel like I'm out of control of my circumstances. That is super stressful for me, and that's one of those things that causes me to eat, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that. So once you know and learn and can recognize, hey, oh my gosh, you got to name it to tame it. I'm feeling really out of control right now. What can help me feel more in control? Maybe I should just do that laundry that's stressing me out on the couch, and that's going to help me feel a little better, right? So a lot of times there's something else going on, whether that's a deeply rooted trauma, whether that's, holy crap, my health is a mess and I just can't look at it anymore. Yep. There's something productive that we can do. And it's just, a lot of it is practice. Again, you might want to seek professional help, and that's okay. It really depends on the person and the trigger. So I know that's kind of a general answer, but it's hard to get more specific without knowing a specific situation.
Right. I love that you said that about therapy, because that is the stance that we take a lot here on this show. I'm a huge believer. A lot of people, I feel like they think therapy is a sign of weakness, or going to therapy or talking to somebody. And honestly, it's quite the opposite. I think it's a sign of strength, because it's not easy to face things about yourself that you may or may not even be aware of, first off, but you may not want to admit to another person. It's really not easy to do that. But if there are things in your life that you want to change, and certainly, I know people that have this, that have a food addiction, and I know that they struggle with it, and I know that they want to change it. So if there's something that you want to change, I mean, by all means, you got to travel down that road, figure out what those triggers are, why they're there, and what things that you can do to eliminate them or lessen their severity, right?
Sure. And I also just want to kind of reiterate, I think a lot of people, when they do know they have something that they need to deal with, they don't want to go to therapy because they're embarrassed. They feel like their therapist is going to judge them. So if food addiction is something that you do struggle with, look into those support groups. Again, Overeaters Anonymous, Food Addicts Anonymous, because you're going to be surrounded by people who are in the exact same boat as you. There's no judgment in those places. No one knows who you are. No one really cares what got you there. So that's a good way to help. Maybe a good first step when you are not quite ready for the one-on-one. To put yourself in that situation where no, everyone's in the same boat. No one's judging. We're all in this together type situation. So that might be a really good first step too. There's tons of those around. Tons.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that advice. So you're going to do me a favor, and you're going to post in the comment section of this show that graphic that you said you had that says, hey, if you're craving this, try this food.
For sure, I can do that.
Because I want to know if crab's on there.
I will find crab for you. I will find out.
Thank you. That one bugged me for weeks. I'm off the crab train now.
It might just be because crab is delicious. I don't know if you thought of that one.
It could be. It definitely is. I'm a huge seafood lover. So Sara, where can our followers find you, communicate with you, ask you questions? Tell us all your goodies.
Okay. So I have a health coaching practice. It's called Happy Healthy Humans, because I believe that health and wellness is about more than just physical health. So we do emotional things. We do, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. I like to cover all the aspects of wellness. And then Happy Healthy Humans, because we're not perfect. We're humans. And I really wanted that in my name because I want it to be a shame-free zone. I do the most of my work and posting on Instagram, and that's at healthy_happy_humans. Happy Healthy Humans. I think I switched it. Happy Healthy Humans with underscores.
Like that.
And then I also have a Facebook group, or it's a page now. I just switched my group out. So I just started a page. It's brand new. There's not a lot on there yet, but I'm getting to that too. So yes, that's where you can find me. Thanks for having me on today. It's been so good. I love this.
It has been so good. It's a topic, like I mentioned to you a couple of days ago, it's a topic that I've really been wanting to touch on. So thank you, universe, for bringing Sara to us, because it was absolutely perfect to have you on. Now, everybody, here's what we want you to do. Please, 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 at whatever platform you love to listen to this podcast on, please like us, download, subscribe. Downloading the episodes is really, really important, especially on iTunes. Okay, guys? And please give us a 5-star rating. If you don't think we deserve a 5-star rating, like my lovely co-host always says, just wait, you will. So keep listening to us. And the reason why we are looking for you guys to do this for us is so that we can get this information, these awesome guests like Sara that we have on a weekly basis, into the ears of more mamas. We want to help. We want to get this information out there. And also, we are looking to create what we call a MOMmune. Have you heard of the MOMmunes yet, Sara?
No.
Oh, so you're going to love this. So I was raised by a single mom, and the co-founder and the vice president of MOMnation, I love that title so much, are both single moms and have been, not right now, but they have been at some point in their lives. And so it has touched all three of us in various ways. And we came together, and we know that, and we understand that when moms are shifting into becoming single moms, so, whether that be from the sudden loss of a spouse or escaping an abusive relationship or whatever, it's kind of an overwhelming thing. I mean, we think it's overwhelming now, just virtually teaching our kids. Imagine having to do that, plus find a new place, plus maybe get a new job, plus refurnish your house, plus. Like, there's so much on the shoulders of these women that are transitioning into becoming single moms that we're just looking to create a space that we can give them a hand up. Maybe they need some, maybe they need you, Sarah. Maybe we should talk to you. Maybe they need somebody to help them with their mental health. Maybe they are suffering from addictions. Maybe they need just, a place to live for a couple of months just to get on their feet, figure things out for themselves and their kids, but it needs to be a safe place and they need to get out now. So we're looking to create what's called a MOMmune, which is going to be a bunch of resources, hopefully including housing resources as well for a limited time, just to get these mamas on their way. And you know what? It not only helps the moms, but it helps the kids too. And that's really, really beneficial because, breaking the cycle of, not saying all moms that go into single motherhood have cycles to break, but breaking the cycle of, addiction, breaking the cycle of abuse, breaking those cycles is really, really important. And so that is on our hearts and minds. That is a goal that we have, and we would love to create that with the help of anybody who wants to pitch in.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. So those are the MOMmunes. All right, Sarah. Well, thank you so much. It was awesome talking to you today.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.